Yes, I did cut my hair. No, I didn't end up going to school. This video might actually end up being split into parts. So, we shall see. Hello, sorry it's been a minute. Life has been a lot of things in August. Some of them good, some of them not so good. A few weeks ago on my Twitter, I've asked people what their issues are with Christianity. Yes, I know I could have asked that elsewhere, but Twitter's where I spend most of my time lately. But also where you can find the widest range of people. And we'll probably get into that another time. But and there were a lot of honest answers. Some of them in comments, some of them in messages. And I really haven't done anything with that. I mean, most of the things I've heard are things I've heard before. Because when you don't walk in the Lord, then you think you're walking in the Lord, and then you do walk in the Lord, and you expose yourself willingly to a wide range of people, online especially, you realize that while everyone's story is unique and important, there's things that can be shared. And I think one of my biggest reasons for asking that question in general is I wanted it from their mouths themselves. Like, I knew that Twitter especially would be where most of the people I would know wouldn't know everybody else like Facebook, wouldn't know me like Facebook. They would know me, but not personally or deeply. Most of the people on Twitter aren't people I've met, etc., etc. There'd be that just enough comfort zone where you know, especially if you build up enough rapport with the ones who are answering and even the ones who aren't, that they can let their guard down and be like, this is my problem with it. It's just anonymous. It's just anonymous enough that you can share it without thinking there's going to be, pushback or repercussions, especially since, and I made sure of it, to emphasize polite discussion. And there was. I mean, for the most part, people who didn't, because I asked one where it was those who don't believe, why don't you believe, what's your issue with it? And those who do believe, what's your issue with it? And I made sure to be like, hey, if you see it on this side, don't argue with this side, and vice versa. Anyways, I got really honest answers. And I really wanted to, this is what I should plan. Let's keep rolling. I really wanted to talk about some of these things, though. Like, I really want to talk about it because we who go to church and we who commune with other believers, especially if we get ourselves sucked into the echo chamber that is, 95% of your friends believe the same things you do. And I'm not even talking about like a theological agreement. I'm talking about 95%, 95% of the people that some circle themselves with are also believers. They also believe in the Lord. They also have, the theology might not all be the same, but they believe in the general things the same. There's a lot of people out there that don't. There's a lot of people, genuine, kind, honest people who view Christianity based on either their experiences or the experiences of those around them, things they've read, things they've researched, some of the bigger questions that we take for granted that they struggle with, and then we paint them all one big giant picture in our churches. It's always, and it kind of feeds into a lot of other problems that we have as a society, and especially online, is us and them mentality. We are saved, they are not. We are this, they are that. But there is a lot of, as much as I say that a lot of the answers are things I've heard before, the reason it's things I've heard before is because I've asked them. A lot of people don't. The reason it's a lot of things I've heard before is because some of those people have told me those things themselves, or I've heard it from others in the course of life, or whatever. But we think that just everyone who doesn't believe does so willingly, or is terrible, or we paint non-believers in these broad strokes, and then when other people paint believers in broad strokes, we get really mad. Like, I've been on Twitter, I've been on Facebook, I've been in real life conversations about this. We get really mad. But in answering that, in asking those questions to believers and to non-believers both, and hearing the responses, the wide variety of responses, one of our biggest problems as believers is the broad brush mentality that we have. We try so hard to simplify things and to simplify everything down to the most in the box things we can easily understand, concepts of, and then fill that in as much as possible with everything else, and just cram everything into that. Oh, they don't believe in God, so they all have the same traits, the same characteristics, the same this, the same that, and they don't. And that hurts. That hurts interacting with people who don't believe with God and who don't believe in God. And yes, there's really a lot of merit to door knocking and evangelism, and I'm not knocking any of that. But this is not talking about that. This is talking about making these bridges with people who don't believe. It is very wise and a very good idea to have friends who don't believe in God. Genuine friends. I'm not talking about like having friends who don't believe in God so you can say you'd have friends who don't believe in God. I'm saying genuinely make friendships with those who disagree with you about some of the most important questions in your life that you have a different answer to than they do, or you have a different belief system than they do. I know people who grew up in church and reject it completely. I know people who grew up out of church and accept it completely. And there is a lot of nuance in between those two. And of course, this is the people who grew up without it and still don't have it, and grew up with it and still have it. I mean, we just paint everything in broad brushes. We miss so many beautiful individual stories. And one of the things that I enjoy most about interacting with people, especially online, is those individual aspects to their stories, whether they believe in God or not, whether we agree theologically or we have differences of viewpoint. I don't have conversations with people who don't believe in God, or who don't believe in the Bible, or who don't believe in church, or whatever the case may be, and in a way that at the end of the conversation one of us has to change our answer, because sometimes it's not going to work. Sometimes you just need to gain their trust, to gain an understanding of another point of view. Because if 95% of the people in your circles are people who agree with you, you might use that viewpoint to view everybody else. It's important to realize that if you see that there's variety in the people inside your bubble, even though ultimately they all generally agree with you, they come from different stories, they have different backgrounds, they come from different states, different families, different upbringings, and then you look at the people outside your circle as other, as less or different or whatever, in a negative light, or in an outer light, or in an inferior light, or whatever the case may be, that's dangerous to both sides. That's dangerous. You are already hindering your own ability to make the difference you always obviously clearly want to, and obviously possibly should want to make in the lives of those who don't believe, showing them Christ-like love, showing them compassion, showing them grace, teaching them truth, showing them mercy and kindness, patience. And then they see you viewing them with the same broad brush that hundreds of thousands of other interactions on Twitter and dozens of experiences in their own life and whatever the case may be elsewhere, and in the same way, and they're gonna assume the same thing. You're not helping either side by seeing everyone with the same brush. Get to know people. Really get to know people. Get to make friends. Make intentional friendships with those who disagree with you about God. I promise you. If you, I've heard this told to me, and it's helped me a lot in doing this. If you know what you believe, you should be able to talk to anybody about it. And now, while that sometimes is only expressed to theological discussions, some perhaps among other believers or non-believers, I expand that to everything. I know what I view about various things of life. And some of those things, like my belief in the Lord and other things of that nature, are steadfast. There's nothing that's going to change them. And there's other things that can be malleable. Like I've mentioned in previous videos about other topics that are unrelated but also can be connected here. And just talk to people who disagree with you. They're not all the same. They're not all these straw men that you see. They're not all these whatever the case, whatever these, I don't know why we get taught these perceptions of them in churches. Of all the places to be taught about the fact that we're taught in churches that all people are inherently sinful, and yet we somehow view those who are not in church or not saved or not believers as somehow different than us, just because we're in church or we're saved and we're different. And yes, there is a difference, for sure, but not enough to not make that connection. I couldn't tell you how many teachings I've heard growing up about, be careful who you're friends with and be careful not to associate with the wrong crowds. And yes, there is some merit to that, especially if you are younger, but if you know what you believe, and you stay connected in your word, and you stay connected in prayer, and you have these things that you're not willing to give up, making friends with those who disagree with those things is not the end of the world. It's not. I promise. I would miss out on so many opportunities of making a difference for other people, of encouraging them, which is half of the whole of the thing that I do most these days, especially online, of listening, of hearing stories, of learning about cultures that are outside of my own. Because if you can believe it, there are several kinds of different varying cultures just within these 50 nifty states, just within Christianity itself. There's so many different possibilities, so many different variations, so many different things that can be shown, that can be taught, that can be learned, that can be experienced. And I would have missed out on so many friendships that have just made life more full and pointed me and strengthened my faith, asking me questions that I don't always have the answer to, because the go-to quick knee-jerk reaction, have an answer for everything answer doesn't work in every situation. Strengthening my faith, seeing that the deep struggles that people have can draw me back to the Lord and help me pull from the Lord and pull from His Word and pull from prayer with Him and pull from my relationship and my experiences with Him, because believe it or not, they can learn from those experiences just like you can. And guess what? You can learn from theirs. I've learned so many things in conversations with people who don't believe in the Lord. So many things about life, about how the one situation faced similarly in a similar culture or even in a completely different one can come at it two people and come away with it with two completely different outcomes. and just multiply that by the amount of decisions that are made each day in life and the amount of major circumstances and events that happen in everyone's life, and just imagine how intricate that can make friends and how intricate that can make friendships. And it boggles my mind that people have these echo chambers in their lives. Believers, people who are supposed to, who are called to go into all the world and make disciples of all the nations, and yet we can't even keep outside of our own echo chambers on the internet, which reaches most of the world. Make friendships with those who don't believe in the Lord. Be honest about your faith. Be honest about your walk. It's okay to not have all the answers. And I hope that this really, I hope if nothing else that you learned something from this that you can take with you. If you have more questions about this video, about something that I've said with it, maybe you want to talk about any of this more, my comments are always open. I would appreciate that very much. Don't forget, and I hate doing this, but the algorithm is terrible. If you subscribe, please make sure to hit that stupid bell, and so you'll get the notification when a video uploads, because the schedule has kind of been messed up again with everything going on yet again. But God is good, and people matter, and it's really okay. It really is. God can make a difference in your friendships with other people. It is okay to be friends with people who don't believe in the Lord. Until next time, stay encouraged, keep going, and I'll see you in the next probably similarly challenging video for myself and perhaps for you as well. I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.